Good afternoon, everyone. I am thrilled to be here today, joined by Bevan Daverin, the President of the College of Alberta School Superintendents, and Laurie Jess, the President of Alberta School Boards Association. Today, I have tabled new legislation that will strengthen our kindergarten to grade 12 education system. Bill 55, the College of Alberta School Superintendents Act, will create a professional legislated organization for superintendents, chief deputy superintendents, and other eligible teacher leaders employed in central office positions in school jurisdictions across Alberta. I want to thank CAS, the College of Alberta School Superintendents, for bringing this proposal forward to government. It is an idea that is the right step forward at the very right time. This proposed act will build upon Alberta's already excellent education system and its extremely professional leaders. Alberta's government believes that superintendents play an important role in making sure every student receives a high-quality education, and this legislation makes that crystal clear. It will strengthen governance, accountability, and leadership excellence. Let's start with governance. The proposed act will divide membership of the college into two categories, regulated and non-regulated. Currently, membership in the college is voluntary and is comprised of about 320 members. This includes superintendents from public, separate, and francophone school authorities, charter schools, and First Nations school authorities. Other members include assistant and deputy superintendents, directors, and other senior central office teacher leaders employed in school jurisdictions across Alberta. Under the proposed act, membership will be a requirement for superintendents, chief deputy superintendents, and some central office teacher leaders employed by a public, separate, and francophone school board who are not active members of the ATA. The college will also have bylaw-making powers to set additional levels of membership for non-regulated members. This may include system leaders in First Nations school authorities and independent schools, retired superintendents, or university professors. A board of directors would be responsible to carry out the business of CAS. The board may include both regulated and non-regulated members, as well as a public member or several public members appointed by the Minister of Education. On accountability, Bill 55 will make CAS responsible for overseeing complaints filed against its regulated members. The discipline process would parallel existing processes under the Practice Review of Teachers and Teacher Leaders regulation. The college will also need to prepare an annual report, which will be tabled in the legislature, and they will hold an annual general meeting. These are important aspects to ensure transparency and public accountability. The college will not assume union functions, nor will they engage in collective bargaining on behalf of its members or assist in negotiating employment contracts. It is important to note that this legislation will not create a union. Additionally, the proposed legislation explicitly clarifies that superintendents must respect the authority of the school board as their employer. Bill 55 will reduce red tape and support local autonomy for school authorities by removing the requirement for the minister to approve superintendent appointments and reappointments. Now, looking at leadership excellence, the college will be responsible for offering professional development to its regulated members and setting requirements for professional learning. Members would need to meet continuing education requirements, including the province's Superintendent Leadership Quality Standard or the Leadership Quality Standard. Overall, I feel these changes are important to ensure the best oversight and accountability of superintendents and other teacher leaders working in central office leadership positions in school jurisdictions across Alberta, which ultimately will lead to better outcomes for students. I also want to mention that last year we spoke to our education partners about possible options to enhance how, how education system leaders are governed. This included discussions with CAS, with the Alberta Teachers Association, with the Alberta School Boards Association, as well as First Nation superintendents and education directors. We also engaged other education partners like the Association of Alberta Public Charter Schools and the Association of Independent Schools and Colleges in Alberta and the Association of Business Officials of Alberta. From all of these discussions, we learned that many saw benefits to themselves as well as to the whole education system from CAS becoming a legislated organization. Bill 55 is the direct result of that important cooperation and collaboration with education system leaders. I look forward to discussing and debating this important bill with the House in the very near future. So thank you. I will now pass it on to Bevan Davern, President of the College of Alberta School Superintendents, for his remarks, followed by Lori Jess, who is the President of the Alberta School Boards Association.
Thank you very much, Minister. Very pleased to be here today, and I'd like to start off by saying that the College of Alberta School Superintendents has been working with governments towards this legislation for the past 15 years, and we are thrilled to see this government recognize the unique role superintendents play in Alberta's education system. We're also very pleased that Alberta's government sees the importance of the profession in education system, and we see this legislation as having positive benefits not only to the profession, to educational leaders, but also to school boards and also the public, which includes students across Alberta. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the invite to be here today. So since August of 2020, Alberta School Boards Association has been in consultation with the Minister of Education, CAS, and our full membership regarding CAS seeking professional status. As an association that supports Alberta's locally elected public, separate, and francophone school boards, ASBA requested in-depth engagement as boards are the employers of superintendents and therefore require careful consideration of any legislation related to CAS. We appreciate the Honourable Adriana LaGrange, Minister of Education, providing us the opportunity to provide input and engaging with ASBA members at various meetings to ensure member feedback was represented in legislation. So ASBA members discussed the topic at length at a special general meeting in September, and during this meeting members approved a resolution that ASBA support the government in proceeding with the development of legislation that would make CAS a professional regulatory body while empowering board autonomy and their work in response to local communities. So we really appreciate the Minister and her staff assuring us that ASBA's feedback would be given careful consideration. One of our big requests was consideration of the appointment and reappointment of superintendent of schools being under the jurisdiction of boards and no longer subject to the approval of the minister. So we really appreciate this being in the legislation. And we know that CAS and their member superintendents understand the important role of boards in providing best oversight for student success, and we're confident with the local autonomy and governance of school boards will remain a top priority and reflected in any professional association legislation planning to CAS. So we just appreciate that CAS has expressed a strong desire to continue to work with ASBA in order to ensure these values continue to be prioritized. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lori. We'll now go to the phones. Operator, will you please put through the first caller?
Our first question comes from Kenny Trenton, Kicks FM. Hi, thanks for taking my question. It's for Minister LaGrange. Minister, from what I understand, around 9,300 students chose not to enroll in school due to the pandemic and the risks associated with that. Normally when there's less students, because education, I believe, is tied into funding and enrollment, will the reduction in enrollment hurt future funding?
Well, thank you for the question, and you are correct. There was approximately 9,300 less students last year, and we continue to ensure that school divisions got their full funding for last year, and we will continue to provide that full funding for the upcoming school year. We don't want to see anyone penalized because of COVID, and that is very key because of the fact that we are still in a pandemic, and we want to ensure that school divisions have the resources they require to ensure that our schools are safe for all of the students and the staff. And so it was very, very important to hold harmless. And Lori here, president of the Alberta School Boards Association, would tell you that that is something that we heard very much from school divisions, is that they really wanted to be held harmless moving forward. And so we listened to that to ensure that even though there were declines in enrollment, that we are, in fact, funding school divisions so that they can provide the best quality of education possible.
Thanks, Kenny. Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do, and this is on this specific legislation, Bill 55, and I'm wondering, this obviously must have been a lot of work. How much of the work went into this in terms of like consulting with various superintendents, and I guess more along how long the process it came to come up with this legislation to where, from the start to where you are today at 3 o'clock?
Well, and as you heard from the president, Bevan Davern, that they had approached government over the last 15 years. They approached us specifically, myself, in November of 2019, I believe it was, and we started having conversations. Of course, I felt very strongly that we needed to engage all of the education system to ensure that we were, in fact, having those collaborative conversations that were alluded to earlier. We did reach out through surveys, through at the time in-person meetings, Zoom meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So we had extensive consultation with all of those education partners that I had indicated earlier in my opening address, and it's been a long process, but I'm happy to say we are here and ready to put this piece of legislation into action.
Thanks, Kenny. Operator, will you please put through the next caller?
Lana Michelin, Red Deer Advocate.
Hi, this is a question for the minister as well. I was told that there would be some money going out to school divisions in order to implement the new curriculum. But if that is so, where is this money going to come from, and when will it be given to them?
So implementing the new curriculum, as you know, we will be moving that draft that we have in refinement right now out to the public here very shortly. And we anticipate validating the curriculum. Typically about 10% of the province is involved in the validation process. It's going to be strictly voluntary so that school divisions, school teachers can choose whether they validate a particular subject, a grade, or perhaps a school will choose to validate all of the K-6 curriculum. That will be happening in September of this year, and the money for the validation process, the resources will not be coming out of, and the supports as well, the professional development, will not be coming out of school division budgets. That actually is factored into my department budget, and I will look forward to sharing more of that in the days to come.
Thanks, Lana. Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. This is one where I'm asking if you could put on your Red Deer North MLA hat for a hospital question.
Sure.
I was just wondering if you have established any kind of timeline as to when the first phase of the Red Deer Hospital development would be finished or completed by. Like, what is the time frame for it? Because there was a discrepancy over how much funding the first phase would receive, because I think we were told $100 million initially, and then there was a $59 million by 2023. So I'm just need a little bit of clarity around that. Is that supposed to be the first phase till 2023, or is it going to go even further down along until it completes up, until the $100 million is allocated?
Well, thank you for the question, Lana. I'll put on my MLA hat, and I've been in contact with Minister Panda, who's the Minister of Infrastructure, and Minister Shander, who's the Minister of Health, and we've been assured that once the business plan is complete, which we anticipate will be by the end of April, that those dollars that are needed to start moving on the implementation of the business plan will be made available. So while those are estimates that were put into the budget, the full $100 million is in fact there for the first phase of the expansion to the hospital, and we know that it will take more than one phase, but we are awaiting that business plan so that we can see exactly what is needed. But I can assure you and assure everyone in Red Deer that that $100 million is there, it's allocated, and it's not going anywhere. What they've shown is what they anticipate utilizing, but those numbers, again, are estimates and can be moved up as necessary.
Thank you, Lana. Operator, will you please put through the next caller?
Carlisle Pissette, CTV.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. My first is for the minister, and I believe if Bevan wants to chime in, probably his perspective, would be appreciated as well. But for Minister LaGrange, I'm just trying to get a bit more of a handle on the motivation for the legislation today. And I know cutting down red tape seems to be the main gist of it, but were there issues that were brought up to sort of spur this on in those early discussions you were talking about back in late 2019?
Thank you. Great question. Really, it's about accountability and about governance and leadership excellence. Recently, we brought forward the Superintendent Leadership Quality Standards. So this is really the next step in ensuring all of those items are looked at, that we are able to actually give that accountability to not only the system, but to parents and students, that in fact we have the best leaders in front of all of our education system. Really, superintendents set the tone, and all of the rest of the school division really listens and follows that tone. So we want to ensure that the leaders that we have are the best possible, that they have the ability to, to govern themselves, that they have the ability to in fact provide professional development for themselves as well. What I see and have seen is that we have legislation that governs teachers. We have legislation that even governs school boards. We have legislation that even governs the secretary-treasurers. And one of the main partners in education that has not had legislation in the past, and as Bevan had alluded to, they've been trying to get legislation for the last 15 years, is finally going to get the legislation and, the professional acknowledgement that they deserve. So that is what I would say, and I'll turn it over to Bevan to further supplement.
Thank you for that question. I would just echo some of what Minister LaGrange has said. Alberta is unique, from what I understand, in the country for having that professional standard for educational leaders in school divisions. And just as many professions are regulated, it would only make sense that there be a professional association to uphold those standards, to ensure that there's appropriate and directed professional development. And I mentioned earlier in my more general comments that this is good for the profession. It ensures high quality leadership for school districts, and it has a significant impact on many teachers, principals, educators, and of course hundreds of thousands of students in the province as well. So there's certainly also an element of assurance for the public that we have a standard, again, which is unique, but a very strong superintendent leadership quality standard within the province, and a professional association that's there to provide assurance to the public that that standard is being upheld, and also ensure that the right kind of professional development and support for members.
Thanks, Bevan. Carlisle, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, a brief one. I'm just wondering more about for members and the fact that you've made it mandatory for regulated members to be enrolled in the college. Why was the decision made to make it mandatory, and did you sort of experience any pushback on that?
So right now in the college, it is voluntary, and we felt very strongly that to further enhance the legislation, we would require that. We want all of our leaders to be the best they possibly can be, and so the requirement to make it mandatory for regulated members also enables the legislation, the CAS organization, when they're fully able to operate, that they can then discipline their members. To have some that are able and not able to be in would make it very, very difficult. So the regulated members have to be in. It's mandatory. The non-regulated members will not be subject to discipline under the CAS legislation. They would fit into other legislation.
Thank
Bevan,
you.
was there anything you wanted to supplement on that piece? Nope. Okay.
Thank you for the question. Minister has to get to the House for question period, so we have time for one more. Operator, will you please put through the next caller?
Sean Penner, Everything GP.
Hi. Yes, this question is for the minister. I think my question was actually just answered on the last on Carlisle's question there. But really, what was what or who was really the driving force behind wanting this regulatory body to become mandatory for superintendents and other school division leaders?
Well, it was a collaboration of work between all of the education partners when we were discussing. Obviously, it was the College of Alberta School Superintendents who brought forward their request to look at becoming legislated. And in our conversation, it was obviously at the end of the day a decision that was made to ensure that all superintendents and leaders, whether they're deputy superintendents or superintendents, that will fall under the regulated portion, that they have the full ability to be regulated members, and that includes mandatory, being mandatory that they're in that organization.
Thank you. Sean, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. The college, that's an arm's length body from your ministry, correct?
That is correct. They are independent of my ministry. They are one of the education partners, similar to the Alberta School Boards Association, similar to the ATA, but they are independent from my department.
All right. This concludes our press conference today. Thank you, everybody. And once again, thank you to Bevan and Lori for joining us. Have a great day.